Hi folks, I am Doc and welcome to the Artificers Guild, the home of all things artifact. Today we're going to be bringing you the official artifact tutorial. That means if you're new to the game or you're waiting for the game to release, this is the video for you. We're going to go through the entire tutorial and point out a bunch of things that the tutorial itself maybe misses or doesn't explain in the best possible way. So without further ado, I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's get into the first tutorial. So your first starter deck is a red and green one. These are going to be typically good starter decks. They're usually quite based around just dealing pretty good damage, having good board states. That means having lots of units on the board with nice numbers. They can shrug off your enemy's attacks and overwhelm them with buffs and pure brawn, as I just said. You'll compete in a freeform bot match with this deck while learning core rules. And begin. So we'll get this nice little intro. This is how you start every game. It shows you both of the heroes on both sides. So we'll see we're against a black and a blue deck. So they're going to be a lot weaker than us in terms of stats, which should be nice for our first ever game. So let's let the tutorial do its thing. We draw our cards, and here we go. So double click the board to see all three lanes. Now I've gone into my settings and I've made a couple of shortcuts too, and I highly recommend you do this too. So I can press W and I will zoom in and out, but for the purpose of the tutorial I will do what it says and I will double click the board. So here we can see all three lanes. As the bot is telling us, we have 3 of their towers and 3 of our towers. And we can double click to zoom in again. And all of the towers at the start all start with 3 of 3 mana and 40 health. And that is every single tower on both sides of the board. All start with the same amount. On with the tutorial. Double click to zoom back in on this left lane. Each tower starts with 40 health. And we need to destroy any 2 of those 3 towers to win. In this particular lane, we currently have 1 red hero, so that means we can only play these red cards. This is something you really want to get used to in Artifact. Having a hero is like having that particular mana of that card in that lane. So here we have a red hero, Beastmaster, in this lane. That means we can only play red cards. But if we had a red and a green hero in this lane, we could play our entire hand, if we had the right mana, because we have both red and green cards in our hand. So we can only play these red cards. It's probably going to tell us to put one down. Yep, so to put a card down, you just click and drag. And it will highlight the positions where you can play it. Now, I'm just going to throw a quick tip in here. I'm not going to be going into too much detail in this, but I'm just going to quickly go into things here. So, when you drop a creep down, it'll either attack, it'll attack directly what's in front of it if there is a creep there. But there isn't a creep there at the moment. So we're going to drop it, and it's going to have a 50% chance of going straight and hitting the tower, dealing 4 damage to it. It'll have a 25% chance of curving left into this creep, and hitting that for 4 damage, and a 25% chance of curving right, but there isn't anything there. So if a creep is targeting nothing, it defaults to the tower, and it would do 40 damage there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drop it on this side, because if I dropped it on this side, there's a 25% chance it would curve into this hero, Lion, but Lion's already dying, because he's already taking 5 damage. So I'm going to put it on this side. And it goes straight anyway. So this unblocked that unit will deal damage to the tower in combat. So these little arrows, as it says, this is very important. These little arrows, once you saw that card point in that direction, these arrows are what show that direction after that card animation disappears. So you can at any time check these in any of the 3 lanes. Will it let me go across lane? No, it won't. But you can check it at any point in any of the lanes. When you're not in the tutorial, that is. So we see our little cross swords here. That means if we press this button, combat will happen. And there we go. So we killed his unit, that's now gone, and we dealt 4 damage to that tower. The enemy now gets to have their turn first, because we passed last in the previous lane. I'll explain initiative as we get further into here. Anyway. He played a spell that did 6 damage to our tower. Let's focus on the basics here. Again, we've only got a red hero here, so we can only play this Bronze Legionnaire. Double click here to see the most, or you don't have to double click, you can just hover over it and see the last card played. It's going to make me double click. And we can see a nice little preview. You can do this on any card. You can double click on any card on the battlefield and you'll be able to see what it does. You can hover over these little dotted lines and you'll get an extra tooltip explaining what that means. So if it has some sort of weird word on it that you don't quite recognize, it's probably a mechanic and I'll have a little dotted line underneath it. What do you want to do us next? So, yep, combat previews, another very incredibly nice thing about Artifact. You don't have to do most of the maths yourself. It'll all be displayed on these little boxes with negative or sometimes plus or just a 0 number inside of it. So here we can see that this creep has 4 health. Our creep currently has 4 health. That is what we see here. That's maybe a little bit too big of a drawing. 4 health is what we have here. This -3 is coming from Skywrath's attack, because he's arrowing straight into our creep. So, in total, we'll be left with 1 of our 4 health. And that basically explains what that little summation does, and that's the same for every single thing. So we'll see here, this creep is taking lethal damage. And he will die in combat. Any playable card will have a blue glowing border, which is just a nice little visual cue to say you can play this. You shouldn't always play a card if you can, but again I'm going to. And likewise with the last one, this creep is already dying, so I don't want to risk placing it here. I'm going to place it here, and if it accidentally curves into Skywrath Mage, then it will kill that hero.
The Legion has arrived.
But the tutorial has locked the RNG and we're forced to go for the tower. Again, we've got the cross swords. That means pressing this will end this lane, and combat will begin. So again, we've got a green hero, so we can only play green cards, but we only have 3 mana. Every game you start with 3 mana on all 3 of our towers, and you can use that as you can, but here we don't. We only have 4 mana green cards, so we have to wait till next turn when we get 1 additional mana so that we can play that. Each tower starts with 3 mana, and it automatically refills each round, as you would expect, and it goes up 1 per round, as I just said. Sometimes you'll have no possible actions and you must pass. Again, cross swords means the end of this turn, and combat ensues. And that's the end of 1 full round of action, that is. We now have the shopping phase, which is what happens just before the beginning of the next round. So here we have 3 different slots. As you see, they're named at the bottom. So we'll go left to right. It makes more sense going the other way, but that's how most people read in this world, right? So first of all, we have the secret shop. That contains 1 random item from every single item. Just a completely random item. It can be any amount of gold, which you can see in this bottom corner, by the way. That's how much it costs. And here, down here, we can see our actual gold. It'll cost any amount of gold. You can buy it if you can. Sometimes, or a lot of the time rather, you probably won't be buying this. In the middle slot is our item deck, and you'll see this says 9 out of 9. This is a deck that you make before you go into the game, out of item cards that you own. You put these into a deck, and one of them will show themselves here. Now if I were to buy this, the next card in my item deck would show, or the next random card in my item deck anyway. So you can constantly buy from this if you've got enough gold for it. And then finally, the consumable slot. There are 4 different potions that can appear here, and they're typically quite cheap and help you get through the game. So Potion of Knowledge is one of them, 5 gold to draw a card. You've also got Healing Salve, which is for 3 gold, heals you for 6 health. You have a Fountain Flask, which for 4 gold heals you fully. And finally, you have a Time Portal Scroll, which for 3 gold will send your hero back to the fountain, which I'll explain at a later point. Point being, 3 different shops, you can buy them with gold. You earn 1 gold for each creep killed, and 5 gold for each hero killed. And you can double click on a card, as I said before, and learn about its different mechanics. So, let's buy a Traveler's Cloak. And now you see, we can buy a leather armor. And now we can't buy anything, so the only thing we can do is hit pass. And now we're into the second turn proper. Hero deployment. Let's see what the tutorial tells us about this. So I can deploy my hero, my new hero Lycan, into any lane. Now as I said before, hero's colour matters a lot in terms of playing cards. At the moment we cannot play any green cards in the first lane, the left lane, or the middle lane, the second lane, because we only have red heroes in these 2 lanes. So ideally, Lycan needs to go into either of these 2 lanes so we can start casting cards of that colour. So I think we're going to go into this middle lane, because he's still got a hero alive here, and I want to contest this a bit harder. We could put it into this first lane because we've got a creep spawning here, but that's for complex strategies later on. This is purely a tutorial. So if a green and red hero are in the same lane, you can play cards of both colours. And then you hit the little confirm button. Now we probably should have put Lycan in this first lane, because now this lane is very even. But we'll see what we can do about that. So now we have the draw phase, where we draw 2 cards at the beginning of, as the enemy casts a spell, where we draw 2 cards at the beginning of every turn. So, your tower's mana is increased by 1 because it's a new round. And now it's helpfully pointing out the different icons. It missed out these 2 icons. So we'll go through the ones that it shows first. So we've got 2 spells first, thanks to this little icon here. These sort of 3 stars indicate that that is a spell. And then we've got creeps, so let's find one that isn't blocked by the pop-up, which is shown by this little mask, is what I think of it. Well, I guess it's not a mask, it's like a little face for the creep cards. So those are the different cards here. Now, there are also 4 icons for items. So the first one we're going to talk about is the trinket slot. These are typically health items, so you see this one has +4 health on it, and that's shown by a little heart. Easy to remember, health, heart. Armor is shown by a little shield, which again is pretty obvious. Weapons, which we haven't seen yet, are shown by a pair of crossed swords, and potions, which we saw on the the consumable space. If you rewind the video a bit, you'll see that was like a little circle with a funnel at the top. It's basically a flask. So those are the different types of symbols you can see in the game. There are also improvements, but we'll get to those later. They look like a little turret. So it's our turn to do what we want, and you'll see this is the first time we've really been given this. We have the artifact symbol instead of a pair of crossed swords. Now if we do this, if we click on this button, that means that we keep initiative. Okay, so I'm going to explain initiative here. I think this is a good point for me to stop and just explain initiative. So initiative is effectively turn order. If you've got initiative, it's your turn. If you've got, in the future tense, initiative, then you'll be going first. Let me explain it with a quick analogy. Any of you people out there who play soccer or football, for us EU people, say you're having a little kickabout with your friend. Just you and one friend, and you're passing the ball between each other and having some fun. If the football is at your feet, then it is your turn. You can do what you want with that football. You can kick it up, you can pick it up, you can head it, you can do some keepy ups, you can do whatever you want with that ball because it's your turn. Okay? So, kicking that ball, which is your turn, you pass it, of course, because you're just playing keepy ups with one other person. You hit it to your opponent or your friend. Now the ball is at their feet and it's their turn. However, if you've got the ball at your feet and you don't do anything with it, it's still your turn. And you can think of initiative like that. It's like whenever you make an action, you pass it to your opponent. And when they make an action, they pass it back. But you can just pass before doing anything and keep the ball, so you can go first whenever you need to. It's a bit of a strange analogy, but hopefully that it fills up the cracks that were there, and you can start to understand initiative a little bit better. Anyway, on with the game. So if I wanted to keep initiative, I could, but I know that I want to kill this hero here. And I know that this card lets me do that, because it can give a red hero +4 attack and +4 armor this round. So by it saying this round, it means that when each of these 3 lanes are finished, it's over. You can get permanent buffs though. So equipment can be played on any hero and it is permanent, but I don't want to play it here because we're already surviving. So I'm just going to pass. Now you see he's got the cross swords, so he can decide whether or not we're going into combat. Next lane. Now I can cast spells of any colour, because I have both Lycan and a Sven in this lane. So let's just pass, shall we? Nothing really we want to do here. See, now it's his turn. If he played a spell, like he does, so because he played a spell and he didn't click on the cross swords, it comes back to me again. And again, I've got initiative. I can go first. But I'm going to keep passing and he's got the swords again. And that finishes that round off. That lane off, rather. Now we're into the final lane. And I think we need a bit of help here. So I'm going to put this item onto this hero. So Traveler's Cloak, it's a health item, so it will go into this heart slot. And there you go. Gave me 4 health. So thanks to my 1 armor and my 7 health, I'm only taking 6 damage. So you see here that the armor is reducing Bloodseeker's damage, which is normally 7, down to 6. And armor works like that. So any normal damage hitting armor will be reduced by 1. That's just how armor works. Or 1 armor will reduce it by 1. If you had 2 armor, every instance of incoming damage would be reduced by 2. So say this creep here, if this creep was pointing at Magnus, it wouldn't be doing 2 damage to Magnus. My 1 armor would reduce his attack by 1, -1, and Bloodseeker's attack by -1, because I have 1 armor. Armor isn't diminishing, it never goes away, unless there is a spell that says get rid of armor. So, let's have a little friend here.
The dance begins.
So we can start doing a bit more damage to this tower because we've got a much wider board. Got more units, do more damage to the tower. Pretty simple stuff. Now we have the shop again, and here we can see one of the 2 final icons that I didn't get to show you before for items. We have the swords for weapon slots, and the little flask for consumables. So the first 3, weapons, armor, and health, can only be played on a hero, and you need a hero in that lane to use them. Whereas things like the Potion of Knowledge, consumables, can be played on creeps, and they don't need a hero in the lane to play them. You can play them whenever you want. I'm just going to buy more of my... Well, let's show you how this works then. So, if I buy something from the secret shop, or from the consumables, it'll be blank. So that's what I mean by the item deck keeps refreshing. So now we're into the 3rd turn, and every tower will have 5 mana. We have a new hero to place, and you might think I want to place him here because we need a hero of each colour in this lane, but you only need to kill 2 towers, remember that. And I was going to place him here, but actually we've got 36 damage there, so I'm going to place him over here. So we're going to kill this tower, and we're going to kill this tower, because these are the lowest, and we've got the most units in both of these lanes. So that's what we're going to do. And the enemy didn't place anything over here, so we're going to have a whale of a time in this last lane. And we've just got to focus on winning this middle lane out now. This first lane is a bit of a sacrifice. We can decide whether or not we want to try and prevent him from taking our tower. But we don't want to overcommit. So there are no limits of cards you can have. And you can drag it to see all your cards. I do just use the scroll wheel though, you can also do that. And there's a little hand sort button here, which you can press to change the order that they appear in. But I usually leave it on the default. That separates it by colour and then by mana. So we've got our items first, then we've got our red cards going from 1 up to 6, and our green cards going from 4 to 7. So now it's going to let us do what we want. I can save this guy by equipping this item. Gives him +4 health and lets him choose which way his little arrow is going to point. But in this case, I'm just going to use it to save him. And I'm even going to equip this to show you. Yep, it has an active ability. I'll get to that. Let me just do this first. So, you can equip one of each item on every hero. So, our Beastmaster now has a weapon, an armor, and a trinket. All equipped. Now, if I was to equip another one of any of these on it, so say I equipped another weapon on it, then this Blade of the Vigil would get destroyed, and the new weapon would replace it. So I will just show you how this works. It's a bad idea, but so if you've got a little flashing icon like this, it means it's activatable. I can use this ability. So I'm going to click on it, and now it, in this little blue outline, shows me what I can click on to change it. So this particular item lets me choose where I'm attacking. So I can choose to attack this guy, and it'll move my arrow. Now you will probably notice that was a bad idea because now Lion survives. But for the purposes of the tutorial, I'm showing you how it works. Now in this lane we can play again green and red cards, He's blocked out one of our units, which is kind of annoying. But we can use this to power up our Lycan to do more damage. So that's what we're going to do here. And let's use our consumable as well. So I can just place this whenever, and it just lets me draw a card. Nice. That might come in handy for the next lane. That middle tower is getting quite low now. In this lane we don't necessarily need to do anything, but I think I might play this anyway, because it modifies all allied creatures with +2 attack and +1 armor. So there is an important distinction to make here between modify and things like this round or this turn or this lane. So all of those latter ones, so if it specifies this round, it means until the 3 lanes have completed, and then the effect will wear off. However, if it says modify, this effect is permanent. So if you play it on a creep, it'll be there until that creep is destroyed, and if you play it on a hero, it'll be there until the end of the game. So when heroes die, if you don't yet know, they come back to life. As you may have noticed from my opponent's side, we've killed a couple of his heroes repeatedly now. When you kill a hero, they spend 1 turn in the fountain, which if you look in the top left here, this little sort of lighter grey block, this is the fountain. So you kill an enemy hero, and they spend 1 turn up here, 1 full round, so all 3 lanes, and then the next deployment phase, which is what happens at the very beginning of a round, they can then place them in any lane they want. So modify on a hero will last forever, even if they're in that fountain. But this is just for creeps. So it will give all of these guys permanently +2 attack and +1 armor. So, as I just explained about the fountain, why would you ever buy Time Portal Scroll? Because it sends one of your own units back to the fountain. Well, when a hero is returned to the fountain, it is fully healed. So, if you want to save a hero, you can use Time Portal Scroll, and it will go to the fountain and fully heal. And also, if you use Time Portal Scroll, they don't have to spend an entire turn waiting. That's only during death. So it sometimes can be quite useful to get a hero out of a bad situation. So I don't have any heroes to deploy, so the enemy is going to choose where they're going, and I'm just going to sit here and watch. What do we get in our draw today? So, I might have decided now that I definitely don't want to attack this lane. It is showing me I have an ability ready. So I could use Time Portal Scroll on this guy, saving him from death, healing him up, and then I can place him wherever I want next round. Which I'm going to do, but I'm going to use his ability first. So, as before, there are flashing icons all over the screen, but pay attention to these sort of circling flashy lines. This means you have an ability you can activate. You can see the one we used last turn has still got a 1 turn timer on it, so this won't be available until next round. This one, however, is activatable, and it will go on a 3 turn cooldown, as it shows in the little pop-up. Here we go, that 3 there. So, we're going to use it now. It'll spawn a little beast. And there you go, we had the 25% chance. It went that way. Which is a bit of a shame, but it happens. And now we're going to use our Time Portal Scroll and get our Beastmaster out of there. Now you'll see he's in the fountain, up in this top left-hand corner. Right up here. And you'll see that he has a check mark under him, as does the enemy hero. That means they're ready in the next deployment phase. If they didn't have a check mark, if they had a -1, that would mean they have 1 more turn to wait before the check mark. On to the next lane, one of our winning lanes. So, we need to do 19 damage. So there are a couple of ways in which we can increase that damage here. We see that our Lycan has unfortunately moved left. I'll explain improvements in a second. So we could point him straight, or we could summon something new. But it looks like the tutorial really wants me to talk about improvements, so let's do that. The card you just saw had this little icon on it, this tower. So these are improvement cards. These are placed next to the tower up here. You can't do damage to them with creeps or units or anything like that. And they tend to have effects that happen per turn, or permanent effects. So you'll see this one, Ignite, deals 1 piercing damage to each enemy before the action phase. So, next round, when the lane moved to this one, before anything else happened, it would deal 1 piercing damage to all of these units. And we can double click on it, and we can see what piercing does. So piercing damage is not reduced by armor. So that's another important keyword to remember. So to my Bronze Legionnaire, which has 2 armor, it would still deal the 1 damage, which is a bit of a shame, but it's not the end of the world. So that's how improvements work. And most improvements also, and sorry to bring you back here again, have these 2 little arrows on them. In fact, all improvements currently have these arrows. And you can see here in the little pop-up, this means they are cross-lane cards. So when played, cross-lane cards can use mana and heroes from the active lane, but can be played into any lane. So I know he activated it on this lane, but he could well have played it in this lane. Or maybe I zoom out. So he activated it on this middle lane here. He activated it here, but he could have played it on this tower, or he could have played it on this tower. So it lets you use your mana and resources from one lane and apply them in a different lane. Anyway, on with this turn. How do I want to do my damage? Well, I've got 6 mana, so I can either push him forward to do 7 damage, or I can summon a new 7 damage dude. And I think I'm actually going to summon a new 7 damage dude, because we've got 2 of them, so why not?
I fight with my brothers.
Only 7 health left on that tower now, and only 9 health on this one. Here we've been pretty unfortunate. Oh no, one of our heroes died. But don't worry, he's healing at the fountain. So here the tutorial is going to explain, because this is the first time one of my heroes has died, what happens when the heroes die, which I've just explained to you already. If they die, they spend 1 turn waiting in the fountain, and then they're ready in the next deployment phase. So we need to do 9 damage, and we can use this. So we see we've had really unfortunate luck with our arrows. They're both pointing inwards. Nothing is pointing towards the tower, so you see ours is taking 7 damage and theirs is taking nothing. However, we can use this little card, which lets you choose an ally and then choose a combat target for it. Our combat targets are essentially where the arrow is pointing. So I can click on my little satyr, and I can tell him to go straight forward to the tower. And now they're dealing 9 damage. What do you have for that? Nothing. So, because he's played nothing, I have the cross swords. I know if I click on this, it will start combat, which will deal 9 damage. So I'm just going to click it. I don't need to use the rest of my mana. I already know I'm going to destroy that tower. So, you destroy a tower, revealing the Ancient with its own health. The Ancient has 80 health, and it counts as another tower. So when it said you need to destroy 2 towers to win, you can actually destroy a tower and the Ancient, or 2 towers. But of course the Ancient with a massive 80 health that you can only start chipping away at after you kill a tower is pretty difficult to do, but definitely possible in many games.
If you stand beside me, I will go.
So we're potentially going to the final round, and I'm going to pick up this Red Mist Maul with a keyword that we haven't yet looked at, but we have seen. So siege damage. Siege, when it blocked during combat phase, in addition to battle damage to the blocking unit, also deals siege damage to the enemy tower. So if there is an enemy unit blocking the hero that has this weapon, it will deal 5 damage to the enemy tower, as well as doing its normal combat thing with that unit. If there is no unit blocking me, it'll just do its normal damage to the tower. No siege damage. But I'm going to buy it anyway because I like it. Now, we might want to put this hero in the first lane because we've got nothing protecting it there, but I'm going to place it in the middle lane because all we need to do is just kill 2 towers, remember? And this is the second tower we need to kill. So we're going all in on the mid lane train. And the enemy's desperately going to try and defend it with 1 hero. I don't see that happening. Now, the enemy hero here has an active ability. He can use this turn. Before it would have been slightly greyed out, and we can tell when things are activatable by the enemy too.
How to use this.
So it's not flashing, like with a massive ring around it, like our activatable abilities did, but it is flashing a little bit, so make sure you pay attention to this, so you know when enemies can cast their spells and abilities. I'm not sure he'll choose to use it, yeah, so he doesn't choose to use it, because I only had creeps there. Now see, before any of my cards lit up, this improvement ignite activated and just did 1 damage to all of my units here. So here is another thing you can do with initiative, and it may be a little bit complex, but I really like this. So I am dealing lethal damage to this tower now. If battle happens, I will win. So what I can do, because of the way that Artifact works, and it always lets you have a counteraction. I can pass, forcing my enemy to play his card first to try and stop me killing this tower, and then because he's played a card, the coin will go back to me again. I will have initiative and I can still try and cast something to stop that. So let's just pass here and let's see what he does. He summons a unit. I still have 23 damage, so I'm going to pass again. You've got 5 mana left, my friend. What are you going to do? And he can't do anything, so he effectively concedes and passes back. We've killed 2 towers, and we've won our first game of Artifact. I hope this was useful for you guys. We're going to be putting bigger and better tutorials and more complex stuff out there in future, but I just wanted to go through this initial one with you guys because I thought there were a couple of things that the game potentially didn't explain as well as it could have. So I hope this has been, as it was, as useful as possible. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this, please feel free to like and subscribe because it really helps the channel out, and I want to help you guys out. As always, I have been Divok of the Artificers Guild, and I'll see you next time.